And a very happy Thursday to you at 12:07 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in Culver City.
In case people were curious, I did the research, and yes, it's true. Gavin Newsom only said mindful once in his hour-and-a-half conversation with Ezra Klein.
This idea of, I think, liberal litigation, I don't know what phrase you used in the book, but we were mindful of that and critical of that, and you marked that.
No, you found out after listening to this podcast that there are other words that he's much more fond of.
Well, to be fair, Gavin doesn't curse on this podcast. Gavin curses on the podcast with Marshawn Lynch.
And that's a up system.
But if his guests curse, they're not bleeped out. So me, as somebody that works in broadcast radio, has to listen to an entire podcast that the governor does and figure out where all the swears are so I can edit them out for broadcast radio.
I'm telling you, there has to be a consultant somewhere in politics, particularly on the Democratic side of the aisle, who is telling them that when you swear, voters read authenticity. Because we went from none of them swearing to Trump swearing casually. But again, he didn't come from politics, and he used foul language before he entered politics. So that is consistent with his character. But you have all of these politicians, including Tammy Duckworth, who's the senator from Illinois, Adam Schiff here in California, Gavin Newsom, and others who for a very long period of time never sweared. All of a sudden, it's F this and F that all the time.
I don't really understand who we're protecting anymore, because those things that are said are part of the public conversation. If the politicians are swearing, if the kids have their phones and TikTok is swearing nonstop, why is AM radio one of the few places you can't swear?
Okay, let's take that argument off the table for a second. What's funnier, when someone uses the bad word or when it's bleeped?
No, it's funnier when it's bleeped, and it's funnier when you have to be creative and say certain things, like the guy at the LA City Council who is waving around a replica of a male appendage. That is funnier than if I said what he was actually waving around. That being said, if it is something that is newsworthy and a politician or a guest of a politician on their podcast says it, it's a pain in the ass to have to bleep it.
Well, if you didn't do that, we would end up in a meeting.
Well, there is that.
And that's a up system.
That's from the Marshawn podcast, which hasn't had a new episode in almost 2 months.
You know, that's really a tell, isn't it? When he goes on the podcast with the black athlete, it's F this and F that. He sounds like Andrew Dice Clay. But when he's on with the white intellectuals, he uses the Queen's English.
Hey, you stay your ass off of Hagenberger.
In a world where anything that is not liked is racist, that's an interesting way of using the English language.
Gavin is a shapeshifter, and Gavin changes his entire personality and his entire belief system to reflect the person he's talking to. So when he's talking to Marshawn, he talks street.
Hagenberger.
When he talks to a MAGA guy, he's MAGA. And when he talks to a liberal guy, he's liberal. He is, as was said by other people, one of the most inauthentic people in our political atmosphere.
And that's so different from Trump, because Trump is always Trump. It doesn't matter if he's addressing a joint session of Congress or he's talking to The Undertaker or he's on Meet the Press. He's the same guy. Bernie Sanders is like that. I would say Bernie Sanders is pretty consistent, regardless of where you put him.
He's a cantankerous Larry David-style old man wherever he goes.
But Gavin is very different based on where you put him. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. We have an update for you on the state's embattled insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara, who was the subject of a damning piece on KGO, ABC7 in the Bay Area, where they investigated his travel over the last 6 years that he has served as California's insurance commissioner, and they found that there isn't a junket that this guy turned down. And he didn't keep the records that he's supposed to keep and submit to the state of California. So we don't exactly know if state business was actually conducted on any of these trips that we paid for.
Well, and some of them, we definitely know state business was not conducted, like when he went to Bogota, Colombia for a LGBTQ lawmaker conference. That has nothing to do with the insurance crisis. Or when he flew to New York City to hang out at a rooftop pride party with DJ Kitty Glitter.
I wonder if he said, hey, Kitty Glitter, what do you think about insurance for illegals?
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Well, now the state legislature is looking into the insurance commissioner's travels, and Randy, they have a lot of questions.
And it looks like an investigation is going to be opened. It's about damn time, because this might be one of the most shady people in Sacramento, and that's saying something. Ricardo Lara. Here is ABC 7 in the Bay Area with an update.
Oh, it is troubling. It is a concern for sure.
New at 6, lawmakers are reacting to a 7 on Your Side investigation into the state insurance commissioner's taxpayer-funded travel across the world. Good evening. I'm Amma Dates.
And I'm Dan Ashley. Thanks for joining.
You know, when he went to Chile, that was really to study California wildfires.
Oh, I'm sure that's what he was doing.
Good evening. I'm Amma Dates.
And I'm Dan Ashley. Thanks for joining us. Leadership on the Assembly Insurance Committee is now vowing to take action.
But not, of course, the main leader of the Insurance Committee or the Senate Insurance Committee. They're covering for him.
Well, in the Senate Insurance Committee, she's being investigated by the FBI.
It was Monday when we first revealed to you the extent of Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara's travel.
By the way, you know what's great? This piece originally aired on ABC 7 in the Bay Area, and it was so darn good. Not only did we play it, but ABC 7 in Los Angeles reran it as a piece for them.
Good.
It's getting out there. People are sick and tired of Ricardo Lara.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Of Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara's travel, trips at taxpayers' expense that have caused him to miss many key Senate meetings.
7 on Your Side, Stephanie Sierra is here with new developments tonight. Stephanie.
Yeah, some of the commissioner's colleagues are outraged by this. In fact, several lawmakers, including the vice chair of the Assembly Insurance Committee and the state's former insurance commissioner, are
Garamendi's going to take any chance he can to go after Ricardo Lara.
Oh, well, let's not forget, Ricardo Lara said that John Garamendi was white mansplaining the job to him.
Whatever the hell that means.
Get off your butt and do your job.
are responding to these findings, specifically the lack of transparency about these trips, which are public record. And now there's a push for a state audit on the matter.
Where are the receipts, Ricardo?
Produce them.
From flights to Paris and Bogota to Glasgow and Dubai, in response to a 7 on Your Side investigation into State Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara's taxpayer-funded travel abroad, the vice chair of the Assembly Insurance Committee is taking legislative action demanding more transparency from the state.
If the insurance commissioner's office isn't able to provide answers as to the government purpose of this travel, I think it's absolutely appropriate for us to be able to move forward requesting an audit so we can get answers for the taxpayers. Again, this is about transparency. It's about good government. It's something that California has absolutely deserved.
7.
Boy, he did so great until the end there. It's fine.
All right. If it sounds like we know more than we do, that might be the case. But let me just say this. If they start pulling at strings during this investigation, we're going to go to some wild places.
This is a thread you definitely want to start tugging at.
Pay close attention to this story, kids. Trust me, you will not be disappointed.
Absolutely.
Wait, was that a drop or was that part of the rap?
No, that's Ricardo Lara.
Absolutely.
I get everybody saying it.
7 on Your Side reported earlier this week, California's insurance boss made at least 46 trips across the country and all over the world since 2019.
46 trips in 6 years. Okay, how many trips a year is that? 46 divided by 6. He goes on 7.5 trips a year around the world to not work.
Okay, those are just trips that are paid for by the state of California. I would imagine he has a minimum of 4 weeks of vacation per year, where he probably goes on vacation with the miles that he's accumulated and the hotel points that he's accumulated from his work trips on his own.
The Department of Insurance is the only state department that has diamond status.
You get 2 free bottles of water at check-in.
Missing a majority of the state insurance hearings held since assuming office. But after more than a month of questioning, the state has yet to identify the business purpose for nearly all of the taxpayer-funded trips.
I think there's definitely value to being able to take trips like this and be able to meet with people, leaders in not just other states, but around the globe.
Assemblymember Wallace says he routinely goes on trips to meet with stakeholders and counterparts in other states.
If you were to ask my office the purpose of government travel, we'd be able to identify every single benefit that came from these trips. And so I think that's the biggest concern.
I didn't want to go to Muncie, but there was a conference and I had to.
Well, let me be clear. To quote Kamala Harris, it's okay to go to different places and to learn what they're doing right. Part of how we know the state of California is failing the way it is because we travel other places. We go to Texas and we say, hey, look, there aren't any homeless people on this freeway off-ramp. What are they doing that we're not? You go to other places, other states. You go to Tennessee and you go to the downtown Nashville area, and you don't feel like you're going to be hit over the head every time you go into a 7-Eleven. What are they doing that we're not doing? You can learn things from trips abroad. But when you're sticking the state with the bill, you better be able to tell us what you learned.
7 on Your Side found a number of the taxpayer-funded trips amounting to tens of thousands of dollars did not appear to list any specified insurance-related meetings on his schedule, including Commissioner Lara's week-long stay in Bogota, Colombia, and his 5-star hotel stay for Pride Fest in New York City that featured DJ Kitty Glitter.
You know they had to keep that back in the story.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that might be the best detail in all of it, is DJ Kitty Glitter.
That name is more ridiculous than the guy from yesterday.
That featured DJ Kitty Glitter on his calendar. Or his mission-critical request for a $14,000 trip to Chile for a United Nations climate change conference.
What about that was mission critical?
More like Mission Impossible.
It was critical that he got his ass to Patagonia.
Request for a $14,000 trip to Chile for a United Nations climate change conference.
And I think that should be something that we're able to easily make available to the public.
In response to the story, Congressman John Garamendi, the state's first elected insurance commissioner, issued the following statement saying, "As insurance commissioner, my job was to always put consumers first. Clearly, this value hasn't continued."
Oh, boy, just you wait. Ricardo Lara is going to go after you in the paper again.
John Garamendi hates him so much.
Does anybody like him?
Well, there are some people who like him a lot.
Senate Minority Leader Brian Jones, who sits on the Senate Insurance Committee, wrote, "Californians deserve transparency and accountability from all levels of government. Taxpayers expect and deserve nothing less."
There has to be a gatekeeper. And somewhere along the line, I think we've lost that gatekeeper with the department, because really, if there is such a person, they wouldn't be approving these claims.
I know the...
Wait, why do you need to go to Pride in New York again?
Well, what I think is happening, because he's duly elected, so it's not like he is a member of the legislature and the speaker decides who gets to go where. He is elected by the people of California. My guess is the person who is supposed to oversee these trips and approve this travel is hired by Ricardo Lara.
I think you're right.
The commissioner's office responded to you. They talked about transparency and wanting to be transparent. Well, part of that is being able to answer those questions.
Now, the vice chair of the Assembly Insurance Committee says if there is any determination that the trips were not deemed to be mission critical, he will call for a hearing to convene in the legislature.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
I'm telling you, when they start pulling at strings, this story is going to explode.
Okay, so the assembly, lawmakers know about it. What about the governor, Steph?
He's aware of it. But I will tell you, we did obtain a memo, Dan, that was issued from his office last year that was restricting mission-critical trips. Now, we checked how many trips the commissioner took after that letter was issued, and that number is 15.
So he totally ignored Gavin.
Of course.
15
Yes.
after. Interesting. Well, the governor will respond to this.
Oh, yeah, we'll be waiting.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Of course.
This story is not going anywhere, people. A lot of people are paying attention to all of Ricardo Lara's taxpayer-funded gallivanting around the world.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Randy, he was first elected insurance commissioner in 2018, correct?
That's right.
And then reelected in 2022.
Yes.
Termed out in 2026, 2 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that means he was insurance commissioner all through COVID when we weren't even supposed to leave the state.
He had some traveling to do. He got to go on those Southwest flights where you couldn't sit in the middle seat.
In fact, at one point, weren't we told we're not even allowed to leave our county?
Yes, we were.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you missed yesterday's show and you want to go back and listen to the 12 o'clock hour and get all the latest on our little Shangy, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify, and you too can find out the saga of Mr. Ramos Ramos.
24-year-old Hermelindo Ramos Ramos.
I'm still cracking up over that.
Every layer to a Shang story gets funnier and funnier.
And starting on April 1st, speaking of Shang Tao, we're going live in the Bay Area.
It's starting on Tuesday. Tell your friends, tell your family. We're live on 790 KABC in Los Angeles and 810 KSFO in the Bay Area every single day.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
790 KABC welcomes Ricky Gervais Mortality at the Hollywood Bowl on May 31st. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-2222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
Well, we all knew that the bullet train was a complete and total mess. But, Randy, it's more of a train wreck than we originally thought.
Unless the state of California can come up with $7 billion by next summer to bail it out.
And potentially even more than that.
Oh, yeah. This is just for the initial construction of the line that nobody's going to use from Wasco to Merced. There is no funding for San Francisco to Los Angeles. It's not there, and it's not coming, and there will be no revenue from the train that actually does get built, if it ever does get built, to fund the rest of the line. This is a dead project.
You know, I would be in favor of spending $7 billion on this dead project that none of us will ever be able to use or enjoy, as long as the money comes from Cecily Myart Cruz.
Get that money!
For more on the high-speed rail needing even more of your money, here is KCRA3 and the incredible Ashley Zavala.
Well, for the first time since the Trump administration launched an investigation into the use of federal funds on the high-speed rail project, Governor Gavin Newsom is now speaking at length about it for the first time. Also,
not something he thought he was going to do, but it got brought up a lot in his podcast with Ezra Klein.
He thought he would be talking about Trump and January the 6th and transgenders. Not this.
I listened to that entire podcast. It was very entertaining. 90% of it was on California policies and California failures. Also,
that wasn't Gavin's plan.
A little bit was also, why was Gavin backing Joe so strongly? It just got weird.
Also, lawmakers got a brief update on where that project stands right now.
As I say, we did the railhead. We're starting to lay track. This thing's starting to get very, very real.
No, it's not.
What world is he living in? Where he thinks we're getting close to being able to ride that imaginary train?
Even the best outlook says that thing's not going to be in service for Wasco to Merced, a train that nobody asked for and nobody needs, until 2033.
Governor Gavin Newsom defending California's high-speed rail project on his latest podcast episode released Wednesday morning.
Wasn't defending it very well.
No, he wasn't.
The project, originally pitched to voters in 2008 as a bullet train between LA to San Francisco, is significantly short on funds and nowhere near finished.
You don't say.
And the state is broke.
The state has so far spent about $14 billion and needs more than double that just to finish the first line between Merced and Bakersfield.
Not really Bakersfield, Wasco, but sure.
What's funny is we all know this isn't going to happen. We all know at some point they're going to pull the plug on this. The only question is when, and why in the hell is the Democratic majority in Sacramento denying reality?
Well, because it has created a lot of union jobs. That's why. Doesn't matter that they have nothing to show for it. It's a job creator.
I guess.
The Trump administration is now reviewing the use of $4 billion in federal funds so far. Finishing the full route between the Bay Area and Southern California needs at least $100 billion. Most of that money has yet to materialize.
Never, ever going to happen.
I mean, at the end of the day, we've got these constraints that are well established already, these pre-existing constraints. There's not a high-speed rail in the system that's not enjoying some popularity and success. Most, at least, are wildly popular.
In Europe, in Japan.
And you control everything here. This was a ballot initiative that you all supported. Why haven't you gotten it done? You're way past deadline.
Just in January, before the fires broke out, Gavin Newsom was in Fresno celebrating that after 12 years, they finally got all the permitting done.
Permitting, as if that's some kind of accomplishment.
It's an experience no one's had in the United States of America. At least we're out there daring.
But no, that doesn't mean anything.
No, there is no bullet train. This is just a figment of your imagination.
But some Democratic lawmakers during a hearing on the project Wednesday had different thoughts.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome.
As much as I appreciate that comment, I feel like politicians on both sides of the aisle need to keep a little jar on their desk, and every time they say that, they got to put a quarter in. Because that is overused.
The high-speed rail had not yet submitted its annual report, which irked Assembly members Wednesday. The state's legislative analyst's office told lawmakers the project needs $7 billion by next June in order to move forward.
Oh, boy.
So their beloved Medi-Cal is $7 billion in the hole, in part because they're paying for health care for illegal aliens. And now their beloved bullet train that doesn't exist needs an extra $7 billion, too. That's $14 billion that they didn't plan on that suddenly needs to be filled.
Not only that, Karen Bass wants a $2 billion bailout. And just today, San Diego Unified, the school district in San Diego, sent a letter to Gavin Newsom. They want a bailout, too.
Everyone wants money.
Exactly.
This is the precedent you set if you fill one of these bailout requests. You bail out one, you got to bail out them all.
We are diligently working on getting that additional information with respect to scope, schedule, ridership.
We have... What will the ridership be? It does not go to the Bay Area. It does not go to Southern California. It goes from the Central Valley to a different part of the Central Valley. So unless you're in Fresno and you go into school and UC Merced, there's no reason to ride it.
No, this is like some kind of weird episode of The Twilight Zone, where the train is never going to be built. Everyone knows it, but everyone has to pretend like the train is coming.
You know what's the funniest thing that I learned from listening to this entire podcast that Gavin did with Ezra Klein, where he got criticized over and over and over again for the high-speed rail? Johnny, do you know why they started in the Central Valley and not the obvious start in San Francisco or start in Los Angeles and connect one of those major hubs to the Central Valley? Do you know why they started in the Central Valley?
Yes, because if you start in the middle of nowhere and you run way over cost and way over time, you can say to the public, well, if you just give it to us, eventually we'll get to you.
No, it's actually dumber than that. Back then, the federal dollars that were coming from then President Obama said, you need to use this money for the Central Valley because they have more asthma there, and that would be equity.
You got to be kidding me.
I am not. And the reason this project started in the middle of the state to go outward is because that was the only way to get the $3 billion from the federal government to address health outcomes and equity for a train that has never been built.
I'll tell you, I know the state of California voted for Obama twice. The longer that we are removed, or the farther removed that we are from his administration, that guy's stock is going to go lower and lower and lower.
It wasn't just, here's money to build a train. Here's money that you need to build a train in specifically an area that has bad health outcomes.
Idiots.
We have no plan. We have a good likelihood that it's going to get worse. And we have a short time to try to solve the problem, right? That's not a good place for government to put itself into.
You think?
I was in middle school when this happened.
Republican Assemblymember Alexandra Macedo says the state cannot afford this.
Okay, that is a perfect thing to say there. This new member of the Assembly was a child when this thing got passed.
And it's still not done.
There are people walking on this earth that were born after voters passed high-speed rail, and there's still nothing for it.
Let me tell you this. That woman will be collecting her pension, and there still won't be high-speed rail.
I was in middle school when this happened.
Republican Assemblymember Alexandra Macedo says the state cannot afford this.
We've spent billions of dollars. We're going to have to spend billions of dollars more to have a small portion of this track that we already kind of know the ridership isn't going to be there either.
State officials say the High-Speed Rail Authority is now doing a broad overview of the project and is...
How long have they been doing overviews of the project? It changes leadership constantly, but nobody seems to have any sense of what they're doing there.
You just have to continue to create work for yourself to justify your paycheck so you can keep it going as long as possible, which from their point of view is forever.
State officials say the High-Speed Rail Authority is now doing a broad overview of the project and is expected to update lawmakers at some point this summer. Reporting at the state capitol, Ashley Zavala, KCRA 3 News.
State Senator David Cortese leads the Senate's Transportation Committee. He told us he is working to set a hearing on the issue in May.
Wait a second. When is that hearing going to be? Let me just make sure I've got my calendar open for this.
Told us he is working to set a hearing on the issue in May.
Maybe they'll be like Ricardo Lara and they'll be on a junket somewhere on the other side of the globe looking at high-speed rail in Spain.
You know, when this thing originally was conceived, we had consultants from Japan that built the high-speed rail there in 1965, advise us on what to do, and we obviously didn't take any of their advice.
You know, I actually saw some official from the high-speed rail project respond to that, and the response was, well, yeah, Japan got it built because they got leveled during World War II. As if getting bombed by an atomic bomb gives you some kind of advantage. It's time to open up the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, this is the Crime Blotter Public Transit Edition.
Okay, this is just too ridiculous, but there has been a transit strike going on for the past few weeks in the Bay Area where workers for the VTA wanted so many raises that nobody could afford. The strike went on so long that VTA was actually offering transit-dependent riders $5 Uber gift cards, as if that was going to help. A judge ordered the strike to end because too many people are being affected, and so now VTA is ready to start up service, except now the trains don't work because someone was stealing copper wire the whole time. You can't make this crap up. For more, here is ABC 7 in the Bay Area.
Just one more day before these VTA buses are back out on the streets. That's after a South Bay judge ended the strike, ordering employees to get back on the job. Thanks so much for joining us here from Midday Live on this Thursday. I'm Julian Glover.
And I'm Gloria Rodriguez. And you might be wondering when bus and light rail trains start running again. ABC 7 News reporter Lena Howland has been tracking this for us each step of the way. She joins us live from VTA headquarters right now. Lena, can you walk us through the timeline?
Yeah, Gloria, for the first time in 17 days, VTA employees came back to work today.
Disgruntled, probably, because they did not get their raise yet.
Oh, yeah.
After a judge ruled in favor of the VTA, agreeing that the workers' union violated a no-strike clause in their contract. Despite that, bus service will not return until tomorrow morning. Before that can happen, workers are now in the process of inspecting equipment, facilities, buses, light rail tracks, and trains. Light rail service is not expected to return until Monday at the earliest. A spokesperson for VTA says during the strike, when lines were unsupervised, there was quite a bit of copper wire theft.
Of course.
Because why not?
Because this is the crime that seems to go on all over the state of California that no one seems to ever be held accountable for, to use everybody's favorite word, and it costs the state so much money to replace all this copper wire.
And what's funny is when they take it in to the illegal shops, or the shops that are acting illegally, many of them, I would assume, have business licenses, it's not like you cash in and you get life-changing money. You hardly get anything.
You know, I really would like to do some research. What do you think the chances are that California Waste Solutions recycles copper?
Oh, I would love to know the answer to that question.
Shangi, do you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And they say trains cannot run without copper wire on the tracks.
Okay, strike's over, but now the train doesn't work because someone stole all the wire.
And they say they're going to get it up and running by Monday, huh?
These things are just getting more rampant, and they're getting more destructive. The trains don't work because the copper wire got stolen. What was it, Vallejo a couple weeks ago? A school had to shut down for a week because someone stole all the copper wire?
We live like we live in a third world country here.
During the last 2 weeks when there was no...
Well, some third world countries, if you steal copper wire, they chop your hands off.
That's true. Here we just have quote-unquote accountability.
During the last 2 weeks when there was no train running on any track anywhere, copper wire theft skyrocketed, particularly on one of our lines. So that...
The only thing that was stopping them was the fear of possibly getting run over by the train.
We didn't luck out and at least have one of them get electrocuted.
So that has to be replaced. That work has to be done. We want to make sure everything is as safe as it possibly can be before we get service going.
So that's another 4 days that the system won't be online, which means that's another 4 days that people could steal copper wire.
I don't think it's going to be up and running on Monday.
I don't really understand how the agency could take the position it did, and then the judge ended up buying some of those claims. So at the end of the day, the workers lost today, and so we're disappointed with the outcome.
The workers don't care at all about the copper wire theft. They're just pissed they didn't get their raise.
Of course, because you have to take care of old number one.
And that was the president of ATU Local 265 speaking moments after a judge ruled in favor of the transit authority yesterday. In a statement posted on social media, they said they plan to appeal the judge's ruling. No new date or time has been set to resume contract negotiations.
They're going to get their appeal. They're going to go back on strike. They're going to steal more copper wire. The strike's going to be over. The buses and trains still can't run because they're going to steal more copper wire.
So the people of San Jose are going to go out and buy Teslas, and then they're going to get keyed.
Yep.
What a cycle.